I mean, I've said had little things, but the very first major thing is I saw a little advert in the Financial Times. And this advert said, football club for sale. I thought, well, that's very interesting. So I phoned up and got the details. And I went to the chairman at the time. I said, this is football club for sale. You buy it and I'll run it. And he said, oh, I don't know, football, very male-dominated. You'll have to be twice as good as the men to be thought as even only half as good. I said, well, luckily that's not difficult. And he said,
Thanks.
he said, go on then, we'll give it a go. And that was on the Friday, and on the Monday, I was running a football club. You know, it was a wonderful experience. It was a steep learning curve. It took an awful lot of energy, resilience and passion. It's a people's business, which we'll probably come on to a bit later. But that was the very first thing. It was about taking a risk. Because I don't think in life you ever really know how much you're capable of until you try. And I saw something in the, I think it was in the Times the other week, this little quote that said, the definition of hell, and it said the definition of hell is the person on your deathbed, the person you could have been will meet the person you are. Wow. And that sort of spoke to me about a life of missed opportunities. Yeah. And I always say you only have one life, but if you live it right, once is probably enough.
Absolutely.
And that is why it's important to take the risks, enjoy the ride. Lots of people think, you know, that you shouldn't say you're ambitious because they tend to think that ambitious people are ruthless people. Yeah. They're not. They're just people who won't settle for anything other than they want. Yeah. And ambition isn't a God-given right. It's open to all of us to want for better things, to strive for better things, to achieve more, to do more, to create more. And that's part and parcel of having a full business life.
I can totally relate to that because I did that myself as well, my local football team as well. I went through that. That is not an easy thing to do.
Yeah.
And even at a very, very low level, they are extreme prima donnas sometimes as well. So what are some like the main challenges that you've been through then? And how did you overcome them?
In my career or?
Yeah, right at the beginning.
Oh, right at the beginning.
Right at the beginning when you started to grow.
I mean, there were lots of things. For example, I mean, this is 1993, so it is a very long time ago. But I remember my first away game. I think it was Watford, but I can't be 100% sure. And I turned up at the door, and there was a steward sitting on the door, and I said, could you tell me, please, where is the director's box in the boardroom? And this little old boy sitting there went, oh, directors' wives over there. I said, it's very interesting. But please can you tell me where is the boardroom? And this little old boy, he said to me, no dear, he said, directors' wives go in the ladies' room. And I said, no, I am the managing director, so I need to know where is the boardroom? And this steward, he put his glasses on and he looked at me and went, oh yes, you're that woman. Stay here and I'll find out what to do with you. Because women were not allowed in boardrooms. They had a very strict policy that no women were allowed in boardrooms. And obviously a woman who was a director had come along and posed this very difficult question for them. But I always say that was the very first door that I kicked open, and I've held that door open as wide and as long as possible in my industry to get as many women through as possible, and it's something I'm very proud of.
Yeah, I mean, as you mentioned yourself, it's extremely male-orientated role there as well, dominated. And do you think that it's changed, because you mentioned 1993, do you think it's changed more now, or is it better? Is there more opportunity now?
It's definitely better, and it's definitely changed. I mean, I spent a lot of my career being the only woman in the room, and I'm very pleased to say now that there are lots of women in the room. I mean, the chairman of the FA is a woman, the chairman of the Premier League is a woman, and there's plenty of representation of clubs. And particularly the clubs that I've previously worked in, the representation of women is very high. So yes, things have changed, attitudes have changed. Some of the misogyny hasn't always changed, but it's much better.
Yeah. And would you class yourself as almost a pioneer in that as well? Because I'm pretty sure lots of the audience would see you as that as well, because you've challenged and you've been out there and trying to make it less male dominated.
Well, I've certainly created a challenge, and I've certainly pushed back. I've certainly stood up for the rights of women. That's something I've dedicated my career to. I spend my time, I spend my time in the House of Lords campaigning on rights that affect women, gender equality, the gender pay gap, women having career breaks and high quality affordable childcare being actually the biggest barrier for women. I always say that on the basis that women give birth to every taxpayer on the planet, we do deserve a bit of a break. So those things that I'm very passionate about, and I spend my career and my position campaigning for, to make it much easier for the next generation than it was for me.
Yeah. Could you sort of like pinpoint almost like a pivotal point throughout your career where you noticed the change or you influenced the change for the better? And do you think it is going to continue as well?
Well, the change for me personally probably came quite quickly. At the end of my first year, the club made a trading profit for the first time in its history. And a few years later, I floated the club on the stock market, making me the youngest managing director of a PLC in the country. So for me personally, that changed things. I think what's changed things is attitudes generally. I think women running companies changes our view on other women. We believe they have brains and uteruses and can use both. I think that flexible working has improved things, but I think more generally, women understanding that when you think of an industry like football, you think you've got nothing to offer it if you're not a footballer, where actually there are many, many, many layers throughout the organisation that are businesses in their own right that require high quality, talented people, of which everybody's welcome.
Absolutely, yeah. And when we first announced he was coming to speak, we had a huge amount of publicity on it, and lots of people were really pleased that you're coming on board, because you are an inspiration to a lot of people out there. Who's inspired you? From the early days, and who continues to inspire you now?
Anybody who builds things, creates things, innovates things, creates opportunity and jobs. There are lots of people that inspire me that do that. I mean, somebody I'm working with very closely at the moment is obviously Alan Sugar. Alan to me, Lord Sugar to you.
I'm in my place.
We're currently filming The Apprentice, and he is somebody who inspires me. This is a man who started selling pickled beetroot, went on to selling aerials out the back of his car, and has created one of the most successful, been a pioneer in technology for this country, and he is an absolute joy to be around, a personal close friend and an absolute inspiration. And the thing he would tell you is that the toughest thing about being a success is you've got to keep on being a success. So no point having a good years for it to fade the next year, and having that resilience, that desire, that ambition, that grit, that want to always do your best. Those are things that successful entrepreneurs carry around with them.
And with that, I mean, there's a huge amount of business owners in the room as well. So you touched on obviously looking at growing and building as well. Do you think there is a peak point when you think, okay, I've made it now, I could slow down a little bit, or is that the key time to kick on again and invest more? Or what would your advice be there?
I think it depends on your ambitions for the company. Not everybody wants to be Elon Musk, but if you do want to be Elon Musk, you have to keep pushing forward. Look, a lot of people say to me that they start their own business because they want a better work-life balance. But actually, it's the opposite of that when you start your own business. Your work-life balance becomes absolutely, what was bad when you were in a job becomes so much worse when you're running a business, because you're everything in that business. You're the accountant, you're the salesperson, you're the credit controller, you're doing everything. The marketing, dealing with customer complaints, everything. So your work-life balance gets worse. And the risks you take are higher because you're often gambling your own money, you're gambling, you may put your house up as collateral, you may borrow from friends, you will overbank something. So all of that responsibility comes down to you. And that makes it much more difficult for, everybody has an idea for a business, and lots of people don't ever do it because the step is always too big. But those that do have to decide what they want. For me, as ambition starts quite small. I want a 100 grand turnover, I want a million turnover, I want a 10 million turnover. Very rarely do you start a business and say, I want £1 billion turnover. You might have that in the back of your mind as a dream, but the ambition starts to grow on you when you realise, actually, I've got something good here. When people are starting businesses, you don't start a business for a dream that you have. You start a business to solve the problems of your customer. So if you start a business of what you would like, it won't work. If you think about what does my customer, what is the problem my customer needs solving, that's a much better way to go around it. And then you start to build on that idea, you start to grow that idea, you start to expand that business. And entrepreneurs are not afraid to learn as they go. They're not afraid to make mistakes, they're not afraid to back themselves, they're not afraid of being a decision maker, they're not afraid of taking difficult decisions. And they certainly know that they don't know everything when they go into it. So they are, by nature, risky people who gamble on themselves, want to do well, and take that enormous amount of risk.
So delving a little bit deeper into that then, so what's your approach? What do you prioritise really of what is the must-have, need-have, or okay, that's nice to have, how do we grow it?
The most important thing in any business is the people that work there. A business is only as good as the people that work there. And creating that culture of excellence and desire and almost mini entrepreneurs around you is really very important. And I think football is a very unusual business. We don't make anything, we don't produce anything, we don't manufacture anything. All of our assets are people. So managing those people is really important. Managing their hearts and minds. And that, the minds thing is about everyone who works for you knowing where we're going, how we're going to get there, what's my individual role in the journey, and if the business is a success and I'm a success, what's my reward? That's ultimately what people want, as well as wanting working for an organisation that has values and purpose. And the hearts thing is much more about being proud of what you do, loving what you do, taking pride in it, feeling fulfilled, and that comes right from each other. And you should never confuse leadership with management. Management is about setting out a series of goals and managing people to deliver those goals. That's very important, but that's not leadership. Leadership is about vision. And sometimes it's a vision only you can see. And great leaders are great communicators. They can convey the passion, the idea clearly, they can get people to buy into it, and most importantly, they can get people to help deliver it.
And so taking that slightly further as well, obviously at Boston we've done a huge amount in training, qualifications. How's that helped you grow as well? Training and learning and investing in your people as well, as you alluded to.
Look, training and development are so important. I think when you get to a stage where you think you know it all, you're actually admitting you know nothing at all, because nobody knows it all. And if you're not prepared to learn and adapt and grow and be curious, that's what it's all about. I always say to everybody I work with, there's two really important things you have to remember, because people do business with people, is that you have to be interested in talking to other people, and you have to be interesting so people want to talk to you. And part and parcel of that is learning new things, being open to new ways of doing things, of accepting that you don't know everything. Leadership is not about having the answers to everything. It's the ability to make the decisions, and you make good decisions the more knowledge you have. So constantly learning, constantly developing yourself, constantly being curious about new ways of doing things, I think is absolutely important, and I put a very high value in training and self-development.
And then obviously with your role in the apprentice as well, being that mentor as well, I'm assuming that gives you a huge amount of pride as well when you give somebody that tuition, that knowledge, that advice that works, and you actually see that change in that person that goes from kind of down and what do I do now, taking that on board. It just gives them a huge lift as well, doesn't it?
Yeah, it does. I mean, mentoring is something I take great joy in doing. And mentors, it's not really about questions we ask, it's about understanding the person. And lots of people who want mentoring are really want to build skills like confidence. People always say to me, how can I build my confidence? And I always say to them that confidence is not about what you've got, it's not about what car you drive or anything else. It's about one thing. And that one thing is knowing that you back yourself when things are not going the way you need. That is actually what confidence is. If you trust yourself to solve the problem, you trust yourself to resolve the issue, you trust yourself to beat the odds and come through. And that's what confidence is about. And if you can have that self-belief, how you do that through training, through mentorship, through being assertive, through taking ownership of the things you've done well, standing up for yourself, of holding your ground, all of those things give you confidence. And you know, in terms of mentoring, it's really about helping people to deeply understand that confidence comes from you and with you and inside you, and growing that is fully within your control.
Absolutely fantastic. So, young entrepreneurs out there, what key advice do you give to older entrepreneurs out there that pivot and change and go into different environments and doing it that way? I'm sure there's not one thing, but what are the key things that you can advise them to do, what to look for? Is it the first hire you get? Is it marketing you go for? Is it the sales pitch? What would you describe as the best way to go forward?
The first piece of advice I always give is don't wait. Because there is never, ever the perfect time to open a business. You have to do it when you have the money. You have to go for it. You have to take that leap. As I said, you'll never really know how it's gone unless you do it. And you do not want to get to a stage in life where you look back on your life and think, I wish I'd done that. I missed out on that opportunity. Because there will come a point when you can't do it. So my advice is always take the leap, take the chance. The worst thing that can happen is that it doesn't work.
Yeah.
That doesn't matter. Entrepreneurs, I've never met anyone successful that hasn't failed at some point. And it's what you do when failure happens to you, how you react to that, that really sets your path. Because before success, there is generally defeat, and sometimes total failure. So be comforted by the fact that at some point, every successful person has had a defeat, has had a total failure, has had a temporary setback. So don't
I think it's learning from those.
Learning from those, understanding what went wrong. And what that does is that builds resilience on the pathway of your career. It helps you deal with more difficult situations. People always say to me, do you trust your gut instinct? And I always try to explain to people what gut instinct is. It's you've been in this position before. It may have been a different subject, it may have been a different circumstance, but you know the outcome because you've seen it. And that gut instinct is saying to you, hang on a minute, what we did last time didn't work, we have to do something different now. So I always say, trust your gut instinct.
That's fantastic advice. You mentioned, obviously, football, sugar, apprentice, but you do quite a bit of property as well, don't you?
But I don't, because it's too bloody hard. I do have a very, very, very small property company that has 2 properties. And if I knew now what I knew then, I wouldn't have opened it. And that's not about the laws that are changing. It's actually about the amount of difficulty taking a project from start to finish, to buying a property to develop it, the amount of planning permission, licenses, building control, regulations. What is on the face of it a simple job becomes a very difficult job, bogged down by so much red tape. I mean, I had a very small, like 700 square foot, 800 square foot property that had a little patio, and I wanted to use half of the patio, I kid you not, it was no more than one of these tiles. And I had to find the airspace above it. And that took about 6 months to negotiate. And of course it slows everything down. And then all the builders you've lined up will go off and do other things, and don't get me started on builders. But no, I think it's a typical example of looking at something that looks easy from the outside but is much more complicated. And I would leave to the experts in this room.
I think we'd all agree with that. It's very, very complicated out there at this minute in time. And if anybody does want to help Karen on her 2 properties, please put your hand up. It's quite a few. So we've got a few out there, so there might be some business to be done. So, with such a challenging career, how do you manage that work-life balance? Because there's so many business people out there that are pushing hard. You have to go out there. There's no such thing as a 9-to-5 job these days. How do you?
Well, I spent a whole career going board meetings, sports day, board meeting, parents' evening, board meeting, nativity play, and never knowing which one to go to. And when I've gone to one, knowing immediately I should have gone to the other. And that leads to this incredible amount of guilt all of the time. And I say, of all the titles I have, there is only one title that suits me, and that is working mother, because that is what I am. And you have to come to the conclusion that you can only do what you can do. And bearing in mind the 2 most important things in my life are my family and my work, I really wanted to make it work. And that meant those 2 things being my priority at the cost of all else. And I can promise you, my daughter's 30, I've got 2 grandsons, my son's 28 later this year. If you're a young woman, just having a baby, or have a baby, or got a toddler, or thinking about having a baby, I promise you, it's okay. My kids, I didn't take them to school every day, I didn't pick them up every day, I couldn't attend every sports day, but they are nice, happy, well-rounded, good people. So take some comfort from that and take the pressure off yourself. And my trick really for managing it is that in your life you need 3 boxes. The first box, let's label that family. And in that box goes everybody you love and care about. Your kids, your grandkids, your parents, your friends, your partner, whoever you love, you put in that box. And in the second box, let's put career. So that is your hopes, your dreams, your aspirations, your desires, what you want to achieve out of your career life. You put that there. And the third box, you have to label that yourself. And the absolute trick is not to allow one of those boxes to drain the life out of the other. Because what tends to happen when you're trying to have a career is the box called yourself gets smaller and smaller and smaller until it completely disappears. And when there's nothing in the box that's looking after yourself, you don't have the patience and the time for the people that you love. You don't have the clarity to run the business and build the career and get the job that you want. So my advice is, don't let that box labelled yourself drain till it's got nothing left. Because if you do, the 2 other important things in your life will totally diminish.
So it's extremely important to have that you time. So you specifically make sure that you take that break yourself to recharge your batteries, really? Or?
It's not about a break. Yeah. It's not about a long bath or a Netflix. It's not about anything. It's about checking in with yourself that you're okay. It'll be different things for different people. I mean, for me, if I go on holiday, I go to get away from my diary. So if I want to have breakfast at 9 o'clock at night, I will. If I want to have steak and chips at 6 o'clock in the morning, I will. I will do whatever I want. If I want to stay up all night, go to sleep all day, I will. It's about escaping the pressures of every day opening your diary and going, 8, 8:30, 9, 9:30, 10, 10:30, 11, and knowing you just going from one decision to the next, one issue to the next, dealing, resolving, it can be exhausting, and you have to recharge your batteries. Everyone will have different ways of doing that. For some people, it will be a glass of wine and Netflix. For some people, it will be going out with their family. For some people, it will be going to the gym. Whatever it is, when you're taking that time for yourself, spend it only on yourself, looking after yourself, and you will get the benefits.
Brilliant advice there. So, huge businesses, future vision. So, are you happy where you are with career, business-wise? Any bigger aspirations? Are you always future planning?
Well, when we first started our conversation, I said my one ambition for myself was to be independent. And that's an ambition fulfilled. I've spent a whole career when you have to say yes to do things, but you really want to say no, whether it's to your boss, your colleagues, your wife, whatever. You feel you should say yes, so you say yes. I'm in a position now where I can say no whenever I don't want to do anything. So if I don't want to do a job, I don't have to do it. If I don't want to do something, I have the ability to be able to say no, and that is very empowering. So now I will spend my time doing the things I want to say yes to. I've got 2 grandsons, 2 in 7 months, and it's very important to me to spend as much time with them as possible. I've hardly ever travelled in my life because I would never take more than 6 days off. So you can't really get very far. So this year I'm travelling to Japan, to Canada, to Italy, across the coast. I'm doing all sorts of various different things. And Alex Ferguson once said that you can't be too old to retire. And I think what he meant by that is you can be so old that you haven't got the energy to travel halfway across the world or all the way across the world to go and see and experience and enjoy other things. And I thought to myself, I want to do that. I've worked very hard all my life, and I want now to take time to enjoy my career and enjoy my time and do the things I want to do.
I mean, that's absolutely fabulous advice there. And because I know we're tough on time as well, because you've got another appointment as well.
I've got to go back to filming.
Oh, I mean, I'll come with you, so I'll get some tips. So what piece of advice would you give out to the guys there in the audience in order to try and make the most of the rest of this year? Because it is very challenging out there. We've heard from, I think, 337 different politicians today, which has been fabulous, hasn't it? Yes. We know regards to tax, we know it's difficult. How do you think you could put some advice onto these to keep going and grab their own future?
Look, resilience is hugely important. Sometimes having a good career is about finding your backbone, using it and putting one foot in front of the other. Well, sometimes crisis can create opportunity. So think about your business. Something I used to do regularly in the very early days of my career is I would look at my business through another lens. I would say to myself, let's say this is the first day I owned this business, or I just bought this business, or the first day I'd opened this business. What is not good enough about it? What can be changed about it? What is a competitor doing better than me? What can I do differently? And I think if you approach your business looking at it through very clear lens, and actually take a step back from it and say, right, okay, let's presume I bought this business today. What can I improve? What opportunities are there out there that I'm not going after? And the same thing with your career. Take a step back from your career. What am I not doing in my career that I want to do? What am I not earning in my career I want to earn? Why am I not getting the promotions that I want to get? Why am I not higher up the ladder than I want to be? And analyse yourself so you understand where the problems are and look to where to fix them. I mean, there are tough times. If you think this is tough, go back to COVID, when firstly it was tough, and secondly we didn't know if that would ever end or what the ending would look like. So you have come through that, so take great pride in having a business that's come through that when many others haven't. think about the challenges that are today and think about the resilience you use to get through that and innovations you would have come up with quickly to overcome some of the regulation and apply that thinking to the new problems.
Are you a fan of, without sounding like a politician, are you a fan of going back to basics as well and looking at things which have been a success previously and maybe retracting and rebuilding that way as well?
Absolutely. Look, running a successful business is about two things. It was about one thing, creating a profit. And you do that by increasing your sales and cutting your costs. So look to cut your costs, look to increase your sales. And increasing your sales is not just about putting your prices up, for example. It's always about creating your business, creating a brand value, creating a connection with your customer, reconnecting with customers, bringing your name to people's foreminds. Think cleverly about the way people do that. And it doesn't have to be an example from a property sector. It could be an example from any business of how someone has created brand value for their business and the ways in which they've done it.
So, there we go. It is straightforward. It is easy. Stop moaning. Get on with it, is the simple advice for that. So, all that's left for me to say is thank you so much. How brilliant has this been? Huge.